Welcome back. Today we're going to see about finishing up the primary framing on the hobby barn and looking to fix one of my mistakes. So let's get into it. First, I need to fill in the corner posts so I can hang that last truss. The forks on the tractor are a good way to get things mostly in place so lifting isn't as much of a struggle when solo. Bump it into place, grab the level to make sure things are plumb, put in those lags, and then we'll repeat on the other side. The last corner plumbs up nicely in and out, but the side-to-side arrangement is going to take a little bit of ratchet strap leverage to plumb up in the left and right. This is really just a side effect of the bracket style, and it's not a big deal. Placing the final girts will start to lock in the general building dimensions. Really, this is more of what we've seen, so we won't spend too long on it. However, you may notice that the side girts overhang those posts. This is an intentional feature, as the front wall, when framed, will square out nicely against this. With the length nailed in, let's get that last truss in place. On this end of the building, you can more easily see how this last truss is placed on the outside of the posts. A pair of 2x6 support blocks are attached to hold the truss at the same height as the rest of the roof. Using the excavator, and getting in a little bit of my own lifting, the full roof shape is now apparent. All I need to do is climb around a little bit to secure this truss from toppling over, and we can move on to our first farewell. Yeah, it's time to retire the first sketchy contraption we made and let this boom extension live out its days as a log rack or lumber sticker, or really just relax as scrap. Anyway, let's move on to the front wall. The front wall is not a load-bearing item. It has only two jobs. First, it serves as an attachment point for the siding, and second, it shapes the door. That's pretty much it. As a result, the framing process is relatively simple. Square up the door opening, place a 2x12 to hold the spacing at the top of the door, check the measurements, add in a 2x6 stiffening board, and then double up the header to make it look a little bit more robust. I'll then take a few minutes to add in the post extensions, which serve to create a means of attachment all the way to the top chord of the truss, and then I'll add some straps for what felt like the hardest lift of the build so far. Lifting this wall under the end truss while placing the posts in the brackets and not having another hand to help was a little bit of a head scratcher. But with some bad editing, it does look a little bit simpler than it felt in real time. The wall went up with a little bit more manual involvement than I would have preferred, but eventually it gets there, and I'm able to move on to the front girts, which will lock in the garage door opening and really give the building that look of progress. It was during the assembly of this front wall that I realized my first major mistake of the project. And from this angle, or any angle I've shown so far, I'd be amazed if anyone even noticed. If we step back to concrete pour day, when the trusses had arrived during the placement of our brackets, we had divided attention, and I failed to do a final check of the measurements for all of the brackets. A rough opening for the garage door is 18 feet edge to edge. The inside of the brackets to the inside of the brackets should have given us exactly 18 feet for the door. So when I placed the brackets 18 feet exactly, but on a center-to-center distance, I created quite the challenge for myself to have the symmetry I was after. The dilemma then became whether to move the post or to just place a secondary order of siding and accept a smaller door opening. In the end, I decided to move the post, and we'll see that fix in a few minutes. But while I wait for that order to be processed and that part to arrive, let's finish the roof framing. We saw some of the purlin placement previously, and this is just more of that. I did want to show more of the process to let you know that if you're motivated to take on a project, even at a smaller scale like a shed or a porch, don't let the lack of help stop you. Just accept it'll take a little longer and bask in the satisfaction of having done it yourself. I also mentioned last week about the spikes that hold the roof in place. A few messages came in that I should give a better idea of what these spikes look like, and I also wanted to give a little more perspective of what being on the roof is like doing this work. So here it is. Climbing on the framed assembly is not as dangerous as it might appear in time-lapse. The truth is, in almost all cases, I'm straddling a well-fastened board and maintaining, for the most part, 3 points of contact at all times while climbing around. Only when I'm feeling stable and not reaching very far will I use both hands to accomplish a task. Here, I'm lining up the first of the purlins. I've marked from the end of the board where the 2x4 should be, and then driving one of the 60 penny nails through the pre-drilled board. Once I'm ready to set the nail completely, it's only a few swings, and then I can move on to the opposite end. Again, 3 points of contact while straddling the frame. It's an easy climb. And when I get to the other side, I sometimes find the wiggle of the building will mean the lines are spot on, and sometimes a little persuasion is needed. In this case, I need to pull a little bit to line things up. Just need to drop down a few steps to grab the ratchet strap, wrap one end in the direction I need to pull, and give myself something to pull against. Tighten the strap down, line up the board, drive the nail, and one more purlin is in place. It only takes a few minutes to do each board, even with the back and forth or the occasional ratchet strap use. And as more of the roof framing goes into place, the less adjustment tends to be needed at any given purlin. Rinse and repeat. Within an hour or so, I've got the rest of the roof framed up. As I get to the overlapping purlins, I'll add a few more screws in there just as another layer of making the roofing work as a system. This not only adds a little more rigidity, but prevents any misalignment from showing through the roofing metal. Now let's take a look at what it means to fix a mistake. Sometimes the mistakes are minor, and sometimes they take quite a bit more effort. One big takeaway for me is that even the best laid plans can get a little off. I begin the fix by determining just how much I need to move the column. In this case, it's just about 4 inches. Doesn't sound like much, but the original placement target meant that I had 2 complete sheets of siding with no need to cut them, but having the post too far to the left meant I would have had to buy another sheet, cut it very exactly, and worst of all, do a lot of waiting. By purchasing a new universal bracket instead, I was able to take a few weeks down to about 3 days, cut off the ends of the old bracket, drill in a new one, and pull everything over. My favorite green strap makes another appearance to help in the pull, double check some of the measurements, and from here, I'll fill in the rest of the framing just like the other side, and I now have a symmetric front wall, and more importantly, a completed primary structure. Now next time, I'm going to start framing out the porch and get started on doing some of the metal work. Before you know it, I'll have this thing ready to fill with all my other hobbies.